Hey there, bookworms. Welcome to Pouring Over Books, a podcast where we dive into the books we love and maybe a few we didn't. I'm your host, LaShawn, and every week I'll be deep diving into what I'm reading, recommendations, and talking about all the things that we love about books. So grab your favorite coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's get ready to pour over some great books together. Friends, and welcome back to the Pouring Over Books podcast. My name is LaShawn, and happy July, folks. I had the most wonderful reading month in June. In fact, I will go as far as saying that the month restored some of my faith that people are still writing good books and that, yes, my brain can let me read things other than romance and romantasy. Because I tell you, I was getting a little worried. Really, I was. I was delighted by my reading last month, like utterly delighted. I mean, I started many books, but in the end, I finished 15 books. Now, yes, that may seem like a lot, but you got to remember I was on vacation for like the first week of the month, and I had time. And I used it wisely. When you have no responsibilities and you're on vacation and you're a reader like me, you use your time wisely. And I did. We went on a road trip. So to get to our destination, so it was 6 hours going and 6 hours back. That also gave me lots of time to read. But I also want to point out that some of those books were what I call fluff books that didn't make me think too hard in between some really good thought-provoking books. That's what I usually do. I usually sandwich my books. Like I will read like some fluff romance book that I don't have to think too hard about, some smut, for lack of a better word, in between like some literary fiction or something like that. And that works for me. And I also DNF books like crazy this month. And I am learning that I found a system and I really like it. I have started to allow myself to read the first couple of chapters of a book or listen to a few chapters and then DNF without adding it to my story graph or counting it as a book I'm reading based on vibes, totally on vibes. Sort of like previewing. You know how when you go to the movies and you see the preview of the movies to come? That's sort of like what I'm doing, but with books. And since I don't believe in giving books I DNF a rating, I just move on to the next book with no guilt. So I don't add it to my list until I am a good portion through it. Usually, like sometimes I can tell with the first chapter, sometimes I can tell with the first couple of pages, sometimes, but the furthest I've gotten before I DNF'd a book was, I think I was like 5 chapters in, but that was like an Audible version and it was short chapters. I really tried with that book and it's like one of the most popular books out there right now. And I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't like to disparage books that, like I said, that I don't finish. But I could not get into it and I don't know if it's a DNF forever or it's a DNF for now. But we'll find out. And since I've just been moving on to the next one, like I said, with no guilt, because really I started a lot of books this month. Like I said, some bestsellers, books that are critically acclaimed. And if they weren't holding my interest after a handful of chapters, I let them go. Like Elsa, let it go. Anyway, so no struggle reading over here. There were a few books that like I said, I might come back to in a different format because sometimes I find that is the problem. Like that book I talked about earlier, I might just have to come back and just read the physical book. I think with that one, the accents that the voice actors were using were just not for me. And I'm going to have to read it. But there were a few that, like I said, were like not right now type of thing. I wasn't in the mood, but I still think that in the future I might be. So I'm putting them on the back burner for now. Like I'm sending a couple of them back to the library, but I will probably most likely come back to them sooner or later. Anyway, it's time to talk about 5 books that I think are worth hearing about with my official reviews for each of them. I may have talked about 1 or 2 of these before, but I think I just gave initial reactions. But now that I've had time to settle in, I'm giving my official review. So the first book I want to talk about is Summer in the City by Alex Astor. I read this one while I was on vacation. So let's talk about the premise. Struggling with writer's block, 27-year-old screenwriter Elle returns to New York to finish a screenplay due by summer's end. Her luxury sublet seems perfect until she discovers that her neighbor is Parker Warren, tech billionaire, and her ex almost stairwell hookup turned enemy. When their clashing personalities spark Elle's creativity, they strike a deal. She'll help him fake a relationship during his company's acquisition, and he'll be her reluctant muse. As they reconnect over late night writing sessions and New York City adventures, pretend feelings start to feel real. But Summer and their agreement has an expiration date. It's all fake until it isn't. I was looking for a summer themed romance for the summer, and this fit the bill perfectly. It is the perfect rom com on paper. Great banter, longing, conflicts, angst, yearning, confusion, well written sex scenes, all the things that a good summer romance book makes. Annoyingly, though, there was a third act breakup, which, guys, I hate third act breakups. They're never done well. I hate them. But it is the only thing that made this book less than perfect, especially the characters' reasoning. I understand the psychological reasons behind it, but girl, I was so annoyed. This is a romance novel, though, so our happily ever after does happen, but how we get there made me take a whole point off. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, but I still highly recommend because it was good. And if you can suffer through the third act breakup like I did, it works. It works out in the end. And it really wasn't that bad. It was just, I was annoyed. But that's a me problem. The next book that I want to talk about is Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. Beth and her husband Frank live a quiet life built on a farm until a dog is shot, unraveling their entire lives and the secrets that keep it together. Because Theo's dog owner is Gabrielle Wolfe, Beth's teenage love who shattered her heart. Now, back in the village with his young son, Gabrielle reawakens memories Beth has tried to forget. Caught between her past and present, Beth must face impossible choices. Broken Country blends the emotion of a love story with the suspense of a thriller, revealing how first love can echo across time and change everything. Let's talk about what I thought. This was one of the best books I've read this year. I was so pleased. It was, like this said, part thriller, part love story, and I literally could not put this down from the first page. I never even suspected the first twist, and I don't know why I didn't. But then the second one made so much sense that, again, I'm like, girl, why you? It was like lingering in the back of my mind. But when it came to fruition, I was like, girl, why didn't I audibly gasped when I read it? It was so well done. It just drew me in and kept me in a chokehold until the last line. I had a different ending in mind, though, when I started reading the book. Based on the premise and based on what I was reading, I thought I knew how it was going to go. But as I kept reading on, I was like, oh, this is not going how I thought it was going to go. And when I got to the end, I understood that this was how the book had to end. 5 out of 5 stars. It's already on my best of list, and that list is very small. So this is on my best of list right next to the next book on my list, which was King of Ashes by S.A. Crosby. I talked about this one last month briefly, but I want to share my complete thoughts on this now that it's had time to settle. The premise: Roman Carruthers returns to his Virginia hometown after his father's suspicious car accident. He finds his brother Dante in deep with dangerous criminals and his sister Nevaeh overwhelmed running the family's crematorium. As threats close in, Roman, once a financial prodigy, offers himself and his skills to protect his family. While Nevaeh digs into the mystery of their mother's long ago disappearance, Roman proves he's far more dangerous than the criminals expected. A gritty, fast-paced story about loyalty, buried secrets, and how far one will go to protect the ones they love, because in the end, everything burns. I knew that this was a 5-star read at the 50% mark. It exceeded all of my expectations. I used to read more thriller-like books, but I've fallen away from that in the last few years in favor of fantasy and romance books because, that's just what I fell into because all the books started to be the same to me, kind of sort of like, and no one was writing like this. I think I'm going to have to come back and read all of his backlist, all of S.A. Crosby's backlist, because this was everything. This is not my usual book. It's gory, it's violent, it's riveting, and I could not put it down. Plus, the writing was beautiful, and I rarely get to say that anymore. But this month and even last month, the books that I've been reading, the writing has been beautiful. As a nerd, the nerd in me likes when I hear all the big words I learned in SAT prep put into a sentence. But what I loved is the way he made you feel with those words. That was the best part of the book. Because the way I wailed and screamed in the last 25% of that book needs to be studied. This was a masterpiece, leading us to the conclusion that had me screaming and staring at the wall after reading that last chapter, like in shock, like, this how you do me? This how you do me? Oh my God. But anyway, 5 out of 5 stars. Someone I follow on IG gives a book 6 stars when books exceed expectations. And this is that for me. And again, this is going on my best books of the year list. And I'm like, wow, 2 in a row? This is awesome. The next book on my list is Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher Murray. The premise. In 1919, a school teacher from Washington, D.C. arrives in Harlem, excited to realize her lifelong dream. Jessie Redmond Fawcett has been named literary editor of The Crisis, the first Black woman to hold this position at a preeminent Negro magazine. Jessie is posed to receive literary greatness, but she holds a secret that jeopardizes it all. W.E.B. Du Bois, the founder of The Crisis, is not only Jessie's boss, he's her lover, and neither his wife nor their 14-year age difference can keep the two apart. Amidst rumors of their tumultuous affair, Jessie is determined to prove herself. She attacks the challenge of discovering young writers with fervor, including finding 16-year-old Conti Cullen, 17-year-old Langston Hughes, Nella Larson, who became one of her best friends. Under Jessie's leadership, The Crisis thrives. Every African-American writer in the country wants their work published there. When her first novel is released to great acclaim, it's clear that Jessie is at the heart of a renaissance in Black music, theater, and the arts. She has shaped a generation of literary legends, but as she strives to preserve her legacy, she'll discover the high cost of her unparalleled success. Okay, so this book came out in February, and I had an arc for it, and I was ready to read it, intrigued because it's historical fiction based on real fact. Jessie Redmond Fawcett was the literary editor of The Crisis during the Harlem Renaissance, and yes, she did discover all of the writers that, are associated with the Harlem Renaissance. And W.E.B. Du Bois was the founder and Jessie's boss. And the two did have, the worst kept secret affair ever. So it took me deciding to listen to the book on audio that got me through this book. I will say the audio version of this book is excellent. There is singing in the audio version. The voices are well done. And I enjoyed the story, even though I desperately sometimes wanted Jessie to want more for herself. But I loved the appearance of well-known historical literary figures and well-known events that happened during the time that this book takes place. The fictionalization of very real lives was excellently done. I gave this a 4 out of 5 and highly recommend the audio version. The next book that I want to talk about that I read, and the last book on my list for books I read last month, was Guild by Raven Kennedy. Guild by Raven Kennedy is the first book in the Plated Prisoner series, a dark fantasy romance telling of the King Midas myth. He turned things into gold. The story follows Auren, that's her name, a young woman rescued by King Midas and transformed into living gold, considered his favorite concubine. In the story, they call them saddles, which annoyed me to no end. But Auren lives in a gilded cage within his palace, believing herself protected. However, when Midas makes a deal involving her, Auren's trust shatters, forcing her to confront the true nature of her captivity and Midas's character. The book explores themes of manipulation, freedom, and self-discovery as Auren begins to question her golden prison and yearns for a life beyond its confines. This, like I said, is a dark romance, and it is the first book in the Plated Prisoner series. I look back and I read this book for the first time in 2021, and I gave it a 2. But the series wasn't complete, and I didn't get beyond 70% of the third book once I realized that the series was not complete. Because at the time, I think Sarah J. Maas had not completed her series yet, and I was like, I'm not starting. That was the beginning of my I'm not starting another series that's not complete era. I'm out of that era now, I think. But anyway, I gave it a 2. Now, like I said, all 6 books are out. And I've heard through one of my trusted bookish friends that it gets better as the series goes on. So I decided to give it a retry and a reread. I think the reason I gave it a 2 but kept reading because I got all the way to like 70% of the third book. I think the reason why I kept reading is that the character, I think the reason I gave it a 2 was because the character is a victim of Stockholm syndrome, you know, when they start loving their captor. And I couldn't understand or get past how he treated her and how she accepted it. And there was so much at the time what I felt was gratuitous sex between other characters. I mean, literally on the first page, there's like no foreplay, no lube to ease you into it. It's just like bam. You're like, well, damn, this what this is. And I think it was jarring for me at the time, but I've become a little more cynical and dark romance is growing on me. That's at this time reading it, I could see where Aaron was struggling and how psychologically she got where she was. Plus, at the time, I think this book shocked me a little bit. Now it's so mild. It doesn't, there's nothing dark about this at this time. Now it might get darker, but right now I'm just like, yeah, Stockholm syndrome. She likes her captor. I mean, but that being said, I know another reason it bothered me so much was that this book and the second book could have been one book. Honestly, you could have combined books one, two, and three, and we still would have been fine. All 3 of those needed to be one book. I feel like this was the beginning of the era where authors wrote series like this. This was like one of the first ones I remember. And they came out one after the other. There was just like a big break starting with the later books, I think. But each book ended on a cliffhanger. And I remember hating that because it felt like it literally feels like it was a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter instead of the end of a book, and that you just needed to turn the page and get to the next book. I almost feel like she chopped up a big book to make those 3 books, if that makes sense. But anyway, on my reread, I upgraded my review of the first book to a 3 out of 5. I mean, it's still not it wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but I've made it almost to the end of book 3 now because now I'm invested because I'm, you know how when people say something is good, you want to figure out why. That's where I am. Like, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's not horrible. It's not great either. It's right now, it's just middle of the road, but I will say it gets better with each book, which I am appreciating. It's like the writing gets better, the plotting gets better, and the story gets better with each book. So I'm appreciating that. So I have to find out how it ends now. So now I'm invested. I don't know, like once I finish book 3, probably sometime today, I don't know if I will jump right into book 4 or if I'll take a break and come back, but probably hopefully by the end of this, I'm going to try to stick to it and read all of them because they're quick reads. Even though I think the books get thicker as we go on, but it's not that deep. So we'll see. Stay tuned for my rants and raves on the book throughout the month, on the series throughout the month. So now let's talk about the books that I'm looking forward to in July. The first book I'm looking forward to that came out yesterday is In the Veins of Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. The premise: Imogene Neal is a siren in hiding, suppressing her powers and bloodlust to survive in a kingdom that hurts her kind. But when a visiting king uncovers her secret, he believes she's the key to stopping a greater threat. Bound by blood and fleeing through undead-infested waters, they forge a fragile alliance. As danger closes in and their connection deepens, Imogen fears her deadly abilities may spiral out of control. To defeat the monster pursuing them, she may have to embrace the one within. A dark fantasy of power, sacrifice, and the thin line between savior and destroyer. This is a new author, I believe. The cover is beautiful, and sometimes I'm just drawn to beautiful covers, and that will get me to read a book. And I keep seeing good early reviews for this one. It came out yesterday, but my library does not have this one available at all in any format, which kind of pisses me off. It is the limitations of my library that sometimes newer books by unknown authors are not available until they start to gather some steam, and then somebody orders it and then suddenly it's available. So I have to decide how I'm going to read this one. I'm hoping that if I wait a little while, it will pop up as available because someone's going to request it. I'm going to go to the library and see if I can even request that somebody put it on the order list just to see. The next book that is on my list is These Summer Storms by Sarah McLean. It comes out on the 8th. Next week. After years of exile, Alice Storm returns to her family's private island for her father's funeral, only to discover he's left behind one final game because that's what her dad did. To claim their inheritance, the Storms must spend a week at the island completing cryptic task. Trapped with her complicated siblings, icy mother, and her father's infuriatingly charming right-hand man, Alice is forced to confront old wounds, buried secrets, and unresolved grief. As tensions rise, so do questions and weathering the emotional storms that shape who we are. Wait a minute. As tensions rise, so do questions about what family and forgiveness really mean. A sharp, heartfelt novel about love, legacy, and weathering the emotional storms that shape who we become. I got an arc for this book, and I have already read it, and I can tell you that it's good. Sarah McLean usually writes historical romance, which is why I picked this one up because I was like, oh, she's trying something new. And a lot of romance authors are trying something new these days, and I kind of like that. Anyway, I used to love historical romance. I find it hard now to find authors that I can get into now. I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't explored, and maybe that's something I'll work on this year too. But I loved her Rules of Scoundrel series. It was excellent, especially the last one. I won't give that one away, but the last one was my favorite. So I was intrigued by her writing a contemporary romance, only to discover that it's more women's fiction, which basically means that there's a plot that does not center the romance. The romance is still there. It is still a big part of the story, but I feel like the rest of the story surrounding each of the siblings and their father and their dealings with their father and their feelings with their father is more of the central story because it doesn't just revolve around Alice. You do get the points of view from the other siblings in some of the chapters. So I feel like it leans more women's fiction. It was good. I really enjoyed reading it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's what I would call a good poolside read, something you read when you take your kids to the pool or while sitting on the beach. I mean, it has some bite, it has a good plot, some twists and sexy times, like a perfect summer combo. It's a good read. The next book that comes out on the 15th is Everyone is Lying to You by Jo Piazza. Lizzie and Bex were best friends in college. After graduation, Bex vanished, leaving Lizzie confused and devastated. 15 years later, Bex is now Rebecca Summers, a traditional Instagram influencer with millions of followers who salivate over her perfect life on her ranch and her 5 children and handsome husband, Gray. Lizzie is a struggling magazine writer watching reels while her young children demand her attention. One night out of the blue, Bex calls Lizzie with a career-making proposition, an exclusive interview with her about her multi-million-dollar business venture, and an invitation to Mom Bomb, the high-profile influencing conference. At the conference, Bex goes missing and Gray is found brutally murdered at their ranch. Lizzie finds herself plunged into the dark side of the cutthroat world of social media that includes jealousy, sordid affairs, swingers, and backstabbing. She must learn who her old friend has become and who she has double-crossed to find her, clear her name, and maybe even save her life. Now, there are so many elements. Okay, let me give you a little background. I follow Jo Piazza on Substack. Her Substack is Under the Influence. She talks a lot about social media influencer, and specifically, she talks about trad wives a lot. a whole lot. Her main character seems based off of one particular trad wife that she talks about quite a bit. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. But I'm gonna read it because it seems like it's gonna be messy. I'm curious. I have an advanced copy of this from Libro FM, so I will listen to it. And when it comes out, by the time it comes out, I'll let you know if it was as messy as I think it was and if it's worth a read. The last book I'm looking forward this month is August Lane by Regina Black. Comes out on the 29th. Every Thursday night, 36-year-old former country music heartthrob Luke Randall has to sing another love song. God, he hates that song. But improvising acoustic covers of his decade-old hit at an interstate motel lounge is the only regular money he still has. After another lackluster performance at the rock bottom of let's start over. Every Thursday night, 36-year-old former country music heartthrob Luke Randall has to sing another love song. God, he hates that song. But improvising acoustic covers of his decades-old hit at an interstate motel lounge is the only regular money he still has. After another lackluster performance at a rock bottom of his career, Luke receives the opportunity of his dream, opening for his childhood idol, his era black country music star, JoJo Lane, who's being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. He needs the money, and impressing JoJo could mean a nationwide tour and a second chance at stardom. But the concert is in Acadia, Arkansas, the small southern Delta home he swore he'd never return to again. Going back means facing the past of abuse and neglect. It also means facing JoJo's daughter, August Lane, the woman who wrote the hit song's lyrics that he always claimed as his own. August hates the stupid song. She hates Luke Randall even more. When he shows up 20 years too late and tries to apologize for lying about another love song, August isn't interested in receiving credit for a song she despises. Instead, she offers him penance. He can co-write and perform a new song at the concert, something that will launch her out of her mother's shadow and into the songwriting career beyond Arcadia's limits. Desperate to keep his secret, Luke agrees to put on a rude performance during JoJo's show, despite the risk at losing his shot at a tour and a new, there is too much information in this. It's like giving away the whole plot. Anyway, so basically, you get it. You get it. There's so much more. I'm just reading the back. There's so much more. Anyway, Regina Black wrote one of my favorite books last year, The Art of Scandal. So I'm highly interested in this one. I have a copy and I will let you know what I think about this later this month. Okay, woo. I hope that I gave you something to add to your TBR this week or this month. Summer releases are slowing down until the fall, but there are still some good books out there. And of course, you can always check out Backlists and other episodes to find yourself something to read. But in the meantime, let's get into what I am currently reading and what's next. I am currently reading 2 books. I'm reading Gleam by Raven Kennedy. This is the 3rd book in the Plated Prisoner series. By the time this is released, I will probably be finished. Like I said earlier, the 3rd book is picking up for me, and our main character is finally seeing through her Stockholm syndrome, and we have learned why she thought she owed Midas in the first place, which makes a few things click and makes me feel better about her. The new love interest, I'm really trying not to give anything away for those who haven't read this series or is thinking about reading it. But the new love interest is intriguing. He has secrets too, but seems to really love our Aaron much better than Midas. And I am currently anxious to see how do they get out of their current situation, because of course they do. Because the next book, I already read the little premise for it, and it sounds like they get away. Now I need to know why, how. Anyway, I also just started What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. Growing up in an isolated cabin in Montana in the mid-1990s, Jane knows only the world that she and her father live in. The wood stove that heats their home, the vegetable garden where they try to eke out sustenance, the books of 19th century philosophy that her father gives her to read in lieu of going to school. Her father is elusive about their past, giving Jane little beyond the facts that they once lived in the Bay Area and that her mother died in a car accident, the crash propelling him to move Jane off the grid and to raise her in Walden-esque utopia. As Jane becomes a teenager, she starts pushing against the boundaries of her restricted world. She begs to accompany her father to his occasional trips away from the cabin. But when Jane realizes that her devotion to her father has made her an accomplice to a horrific crime, she flees Montana to the only place she knows to look for answers about her mysterious past and her mother's death, San Francisco. She will come to question everything she values. This book was on my summer reading guide, and it came in from the library last week. I have it right here, and I can't wait to read it. I am going to see how far I can get through this one this week before I get distracted by like I said, I get distracted by like the fourth book in the Plated Prisoners series. And up next on my reading list after I finish What Kind of Paradise, and probably after I finish the Plated Prisoner series, because I'm gonna have to finish, is Curvy Girl Summer by Danielle Allen. After a one-night stand with her clingy ex, Aaliyah James has an epiphany. This ain't it. She knows what she wants, and she's ready to move past casual hookups, flings, and situationships. But for her family, the clock is ticking. After all, she's almost 30. And when they imply that her personality and her body might be too big to land a man, she lets them know that they've gone too far, and her non-existent man loves her curves, thank you very much. Now she has 7 weeks to find the perfect boyfriend to rub in their faces at the big fancy birthday celebration she's been planning. After her first blind date goes wrong, charming local bartender Ahmad Williamson consoles her with a drink and some playful banter. Aaliyah takes him up on his suggestion to use a dating app, but the more she sees of his warm, funny, and easygoing nature, the less she wants to check her DMs. Will her next swipe bring her closer to true love, or is her real match closer than she thinks? I cracked open the first page of this book, and the first line might have me ditching all the others and finishing this one. I clutch my pearls. That is all. Well, friends, okay. That's it. That is all I have this week. I hope you enjoy your long weekend with barbecue, family, and fireworks. If you loved this episode, do me a favor. Make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss the next one. It's free. It helps the show. It helps us find more bookish friends, and it keeps your TBR interesting. As always, you can follow me personally on IG and TikTok at LaShawn Wiltz, and on my Substack at Letters to LaShawn. Okay, friends, thank you for listening. I feel like I talked so much this week. Oh my goodness, this was a longer than usual episode. All right, talk to you next week. Bye-bye.